again, and welcome to the Off-SZN show. This is episode number 9. My name is Krista Turk. It is February 26, 2025. Tonight on the program, we are going to do a deep dive into the history of the Manhattan Beach Open. Trevor Crabb, in an appearance on Sandcast that was released earlier today, talking about his partnership with Phil Dahlhauser. And Try Bourne asking him the question, is there any tournament that motivated you more than any other to partner up with Phil? We'll get you that clip in a minute, and then we'll take a look at many years at this point, 6 decades of the Manhattan Beach Open, the granddaddy of them all, the beach volleyball tournament, the most iconic tournament there is. And we will look at over 60 years of history of the Manhattan Beach Open, who has the most, who is in the running. So we'll look at that here on the Off-SZN show tonight. As I said, episode number 9 of the Off-SZN show. And a quick programming note for you. Next week, March 5th, we will be doing the same thing we're doing tonight on the women's side. So we're going to take a look at the history of the Manhattan Beach Open on the women's side, taking a look at the current players that had their names on the pier, and if any, or all if any, we'll take a look at the players that have an opportunity to cement themselves in the legacy of American beach volleyball by getting their name on the pier, up there with the likes of Misty May, Carrie Walsh, April Ross, and many more. So March 5th, that's next Wednesday night on the Off-SZN show, the Women's Manhattan Beach Open history, any news and notes that happen over the course of the next week. We'll bring you those as we do each and every week here on the Off-SZN show. And then, sadly and happily at the same time, 2 weeks from tonight, March 12th, 2025, it is the season finale of the Off-SZN show, Season 1 finale. As we look and we start to prepare ourselves for the 2025 beach volleyball season, the first event of the season, March 20th through the 23rd, a challenge event from Mexico. Bunch of U.S. names on that entry list. We talked about that last week here on the program. So sadly and happily, sadly because the Off-SZN show is coming to an end, happily because we get beach volleyball to watch, comment on, gamble on, hang out, talk about. So a bittersweet ending to the first season of the Off-SZN show. As I say each and every week, and please take me up on the opportunity. Give us a call on the program here. The number, 978-254-1707. You can call us at any time. Get your opinions, thoughts. Just chop it up, talk a little beach volleyball in the off-season. You can also join us in the chat on YouTube. We'll have that up on the screen throughout the night. And if you ever want to get a hold of me, leave me a voicemail, leave me a note to add to the program. It's betthebeach@gmail.com, or you can DM me on any of the social media platforms that you see right there, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. It is at betthebeach. Before we get to the Manhattan Beach Open, just a quick note. The first event of the season, technically in the books, King and Queen of the Court from Tenerife. The U.S. sending 3 teams, 2 men's, 1 women's team, and the U.S. coming back with 2 medals, a bronze medal on both the men's side and the women's side. Congratulations to Andy Benish and Sean Cook, our guy Sean Cook, for taking a hard-fought 3rd at the King and Queen of the Court, and then Corinne Quiggle and Chloe Loreen for the women, also taking a bronze at the King and Queen of the Court this past weekend. But as I said, the first real event of the season a couple weeks from now. So we are starting to turn our attention to the Beach Pro Tour, and coming up pretty quick too. Less than 7 weeks at this point. The first AVP qualifier. I'm gonna start doing some digging around, figuring out when the entry list for that first qualifier, the April 12th qualifier, is going to get published. We'll see if I can get my sources to give me a little inside scoop on when that entry list gets published. As soon as it does, I will get it to you. If the Off-SZN show is retired at that point, if it doesn't happen before March 12th, you can get me on Instagram, probably the easiest way to get breaking news throughout the 2025 season. And we'll be posting content throughout the season, probably live streams, live watch-alongs of big matches, some kind of gambling content as we watch and view and talk about the tournaments throughout the 2025 season. So no regular schedule there, but we hopping in intermittently. But follow us on the social media platforms, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, to get an idea and update of when we have that information and we will bring it to you. So congratulations to, as I said, Sean Cook, Andy Benish, Corin Quiggle, Chloe Laureen for taking bronze in that Tenerife in the King and Queen of the Court. Let us start tonight with a clip from the Sandcast podcast. I listened to this, or I watched this clip, I think, on Monday, Tuesday, and it got me thinking. But first, let me get you the clip. Tri-Born on the Sandcast podcast with guest Trevor Crabb.
What's the biggest goal? Any tournaments highlighted for you guys?
One of the big reasons I think we got together
I knew it.
is for Manhattan Beach and Phil to get number 8 and tie Karch's record.
Ooh. Is Karch number 1?
Karch is 1 at 8. Phil's at 7. So that was that's pretty cool if we can do that.
So this clip got me thinking, and I highly suggest that you go to YouTube or any where you get your podcast if you want to listen to an audio form. Check out the this week's episode of the Sandcast podcast. Trevor Crabb talking with Tri-Born about the 2025 season, about his plans internationally, playing with Cody Caldwell for the first 2 events in Mexico, saying that World Champs is in their thoughts, but they haven't committed as a partnership that far, taking it a couple tournaments at a time, is Trevor Crabb, who's really focusing, for the purposes of 2025, on playing the AVP. He's been in almost a perennial quad with COVID delaying the 2020 Olympics to 2021. He really was 6 years of the last 8, or almost 7 of the last 8 in Olympic qualification. So he's focused on playing domestically for the 2025 season with his partner, Phil Dahlhauser. So I hear that and I think, all right, Phil Dahlhauser has 7, Karch has 8, if the guys are to be trusted. What's the rest of that list look like? So I went to the internet, and thank you to BVB Info, thank you to Wikipedia, thank you to many sources, and I compiled right here the 64-plus year history of the Manhattan Beach Open. The first Manhattan Beach Open, 1960, won by Mike Bright and Mike O'Hara. At that time, not sponsored by the AVP, wouldn't be sponsored by the AVP until 1984. Mike Bright and Mike O'Hara, the winners of the first 5 consecutive Manhattan Beach Open championships. And you see their names there on that list just below Phil Dahlhauser. What is that? 6 guys there tied with 5 Manhattan Beach Open wins all time. So Karch, the legend, has 8. Phil Dahlhauser currently sitting there with 7. Trevor Crabb also on this list, sitting there with 4. And important to note here, and we'll talk about it throughout the course of the night, the only other player with more than 1 Manhattan Beach Open championship that is currently an active player on the tour is Tri-Born. So you have Phil Dahlhauser, Trevor Crabb, and Tri-Born. Tri-Born with 2, Trevor with 4, Phil Dahlhauser with 7. So the only legitimate shot we have at the moment of an active player overtaking Karch Kiraly, the best, biggest one by a wide margin, is that Phil Dahlhauser. 1 more Manhattan Beach Open win, and expected to tackle 2025's Manhattan Beach Open with new partner Trevor Crabb, as you just saw there. Phil Dahlhauser needing only 1 win to tie the legend, the GOAT, Karch Kiraly, with 8 Manhattan Beach Open wins of all time. But I taking a look at that list and going through the years of the Manhattan Beach Open got me thinking. And it got me thinking of a couple things. The first thing I thought was, are there any players currently active that have an opportunity, besides the players on this list, Phil and Trevor, who have an opportunity to take the lead spot there from Karch, either Karch or Karch and Phil? So we'll take a look at that. The second thing I thought about was, I want to take a look, just a deeper dive into the history of the Manhattan Beach Open. Who won it? Who won it in what decades? The Ron Van Hagen years, for example. 5 tournaments. How did he win them? When did he win them? What was that like? And it got me thinking about a concept that, if you're familiar with Bill Simmons of Grantland, he came up with this concept a bunch of years ago, and I always liked it. And the concept was, if you're familiar with pro wrestling, the championship belt. If you win the top level fight in wrestling. You get the championship belt, and you hold on to that championship belt until it gets taken away from you. And Bill's concept was, why don't we apply the championship belt concept historically more to other things? Like his example always has been actors. Tom Hanks had it for a few years. Leo DiCaprio has had it for a few years. Brad Pitt may have had it for a couple years in there. When did a actor or actress start having it, and what was the defining moment in the moment when that flipped and that championship belt went to that next person? So my next step then was to take a look at year by year, who won the tournaments, when they won the tournaments, and really what generations were dominant at what times. So we went into it. We took a look at it. Who was the king of the pier? King of the pier, a bet the beach concept, saying during this time frame, this player or players, in the case of Mike Bright and Mike O'Hara, they were the king of the pier, and they held on to it throughout that entire time frame. And as soon as that time frame was over, they may have still had some success, but they were no longer the king of the pier. So taking a look at that right there, 1960 to 1964, the first iteration of the Manhattan Beach Open, 1960, Mike Bright and Mike O'Hara winning all 5 of the first Manhattan Beach Open tournaments. Gene Selznick, the runner-up in the first 3 of those. And then in 1964, the final year of Mike Bright and Mike O'Hara holding that championship belt, holding that king of the pier, again, about the beach title assignment. This is subjective, so if you disagree, let me know in the comments or give me a call, 978-254-1707. I'd like to get your thoughts on it. 1964, Mike Bright and Mike O'Hara, winners of 4 straight, going for their 5th consecutive Manhattan Beach Open championship, faced Rand Carter and Ron Van Hagen in the Manhattan Beach Open finals. Mike Bright and Mike O'Hara won. That was their 5th straight, and it would be their last Manhattan Beach Open championship, because the torch, as they may say, at that point had been passed. We may not have known it for a couple of years, but that name, Ron Van Hagen, who took a second in the 1964 Manhattan Beach Open championship, would then go on to hold the title of King of the Pier from 1965 to 1974. In 10 years of play, those 10 years right there, 5 firsts, 4 second places in 10 years. So in 9 of 10 consecutive years, Ron Van Hagen was in the Manhattan Beach Open finals. He finished his career 5 firsts, 6 second, and 1 third did Ron Van Hagen. And we'll take a look here in a few minutes at just a little bit more of his stats. 1975, the torch gets passed once again. Ron Van Hagen in the Manhattan Beach Open finals, 1975, takes a second place. The winners in 1975, Greg Lee and a man by the name of Jim Menges. Jim Menges would take the championship belt. Jim Menges in 1975 with his first Manhattan Beach Open championship over Ron Van Hagen, who had been the king of the pier for 10 years at that point. Jim Menges would win the Manhattan Beach Open championship, his first of 5 in his career. Over that 6-year stretch from 1975 to 1981, Jim Menges would take 5 firsts, 1 second place in 7 years. So 6 of the next 7 years, Jim Menges would appear in a Manhattan Beach Open finals. So those 3, or I guess 4 names if you want to go Bright and O'Hara as a pair, in the first 21 years of the Manhattan Beach Open championship, those 3 individuals or a team were in all but 2 Manhattan Beach Open finals. Jim Menges, as I said, would go on to win 5 Manhattan Beach Open championships. He'd win it with 4 different partners: Greg Lee, Chris Marlowe, Greg Lee again, St. John Smith, and Randy Stoklos. And Jim Menges would hold that championship belt. He would be the king of the pier for a 6-year stretch, 1975 to 1981. An interesting thing happens here in 1980, and it's something we're going to look at and we're going to talk about here over the course of the next few minutes. 1980, a youngster on the scene, 20-year-old Karch Karai. I don't know, ever heard of him? Karch Karai and his partner, St. John Smith, win the 1980 Manhattan Beach Open Championship. Karch Karai would go on to win quite a few, as you might have guessed. We'll talk about that in a minute. Karch Kiraly in 1980 beats Matt Gage and Jim Menges in the 1980 Manhattan Beach Open Finals. The reason that Karch Kiraly doesn't take over the championship belt at this point is not because he got beat. So Karch Kiraly in 1980 wins it with St. John Smith, right? And then Karch Kiraly at the time also playing indoor beach volleyball. Playing indoor, playing indoor is the number one priority for Karch Kiraly at the time, and he plays beach when he can. A lot of late season tournaments in and around the schedule for his indoor team. Karch Kiraly does not play in another Manhattan Beach Open Finals until 1988. So that's 7 years, from 81 to 87. Karch does not appear in a Manhattan Beach Open. If he did, I'm not sure we'd be sitting here today saying Phil has a chance to overtake Karch or tie Karch at the top of the list. Because Karch wins in 1980. His first year back in 1988, he wins again with a different partner. And in the interim, in those 7 years, goes out and wins 2 gold medals, 2 Olympic gold medals with the U.S. indoor national team. So that 7 years is very important as we talk about the King of the Pier. I couldn't say that Karch Kiraly was the king of the pier from 1980 to 1988 because he didn't win. He also didn't play. So that first Manhattan Beach Open championship for Karch Kiraly that happens in 1980, I don't know if you call it a blip on the radar of history, but Karch doesn't take the belt at that point. If he hadn't gone to play indoor, if he had stayed on the beach, Karch takes the belt right then. And I think the story is very different for the next 2 guys on this list. 1982, Mike Dodd and Tim Hovland on the scene. Dodd and Hov win 5 out of the next 6. 4 of those against St. John Smith and Randy Stoklos. Randy Stoklos, a guy that we saw on that last list just a few seconds ago. Randy Stoklos with 4 Manhattan Beach Open wins all time. Randy Stoklos in that 4-year period, 4 second places at the mercy of Mike Dodd and Tim Hovland. Would the story be different if Karch had played during this time? It certainly would. Would the story have been different if Dodd and Hov did not have Randy Stoklos and St. John Smith's number during that time period? Yeah, it certainly would have been. Would Randy Stoklos' name in a lot of people's minds be on this list? The first guy in American beach volleyball to make over $1 million playing the sport. But Randy Stoklos doesn't make it on this list because he never has a period of dominance. Did he win Manhattan Beach Open championships? Of course he did. He won 4 of them. One with Jim Menges, who we already talked about. St. John Smith. Adam Johnson. 2 with St. John Smith. So Stoklos got his name on the pier 4 times. But never, in my mind, weirdly, very weirdly, I would say, was the king of the pier at any one time. And same could be said for his longtime partner, St. John Smith. A guy who, for many, many years, and if you've read the book, and if you haven't, I suggest it, Kings of Summer by Kent Steffes and Travis Merwitter talk a lot about the split, the divide at the time in the late 80s, early 90s between Karch Kiraly and St. John Smith. St. John focused very emphatically at the time on the international game, making it an Olympic sport for 1996. That was really credit to St. John Smith and his hard work, really developing the FIB and the International Beach Volleyball Tour. AVP was not a priority for St. John for many of those years, but don't be fooled by that and thinking that he wasn't playing in Manhattan Beach Open championships. He was, and he won plenty, won 4 of them, but got beat by Dodd and Hov for 4 of them. So 1982, 1987, King of the Pier, that goes to Mike Dodd and Tim Hovland. And then in 1988, as we said, Karch Kiraly, back on the scene, winner of 2 Olympic indoor beach volleyball gold medals. Karch comes back out to the beach. And what does he do? He wins, and he wins consistently. From 1988 to 2004, Karch Kiraly wins 7 Manhattan Beach Open championships in a 15-year stretch. He won 8, dating back to that 1980 win with St. John Smith. Karch won 8 Manhattan Beach Open championships with 8 opportunities. Never took a second in a Manhattan Beach Open finals, did Karch Kiraly. And in the middle of his career, from age 20 to age 27, didn't set foot on the sand of the Manhattan Beach Open championship. Still ended up with his name on the pier 8 times. So Karch Kiraly, the unquestionable, in my mind, GOAT of beach volleyball. A 16-year stretch where Karch was the king of the pier, and a very, very timely handoff, winning the 2004 tournament with Mike Lambert. 2005, who takes a second place in the Manhattan Beach Open Championship? None other than Phil Dahlhauser. So, Karch versus Phil. That's really the question that this all comes down to, isn't it? Phil Dahlhauser, at the current age of 45 years old. Also, happy birthday, Phil. Just had a birthday about a month ago. Phil, 45 years old. Karch won his last tournament in 2004 at age 44 with the partner Mike Lambert, as I just said. Karch, from 1988 to 2004, was our king of the pier. 8 Manhattan Beach Open wins in 8 finals appearances. Did not ever lose a Manhattan Beach Open finals. Took his first in 1980 at age 20 with St. John Smith, as I said. And then in 2005, the torch gets passed. Phil Dahlhauser becomes the king of the pier. Phil Dahlhauser takes the torch from Karch Karai, and Phil runs with it. 7 Manhattan Beach Open wins and 10 finals appearances. His first in 2006 at the age of 26. That was with Todd Rogers. His last, 2018, at age 38 with his partner Nick Lucena. Phil, winner of 7 with 3 different partners. Sean Rosenthal in 2014. Karch, 24-year period, 8 wins, 5 different partners. Can Phil get his name on the pier an 8th time with partner Trevor Crabb? Trevor Crabb, who, amazingly, to the surprise of many, including his friends, I've heard them talk about it, has become pretty much the unquestioned next king of the pier. So starting in 2019, in the last 5 consecutive tournaments, Trevor Crabb has been in the last 5 Manhattan Beach Open finals. Trevor Crabb has won 4 of them. Took a second place one time in 2023, losing to his younger brother Taylor Crabb and his partner Taylor Sander. Trevor winning in 2019 with Reed Priddy, 2 in a row, 2021 and 2022 with Tri Bourne, and then of course about 6 months ago at this point, 5 months ago, with his partner Theo Brunner. Starting in 2015, Trevor Crabb has taken a third, a second, did not take a top 3 in 2018, then took a first, a second, and a first. 7 tournaments dating back to 2017 for Trevor Crabb, 6 finals appearances, 4 championships in that time for Trevor Crabb. Used to be Never Trevor, now it's Forever Trevor. He took his first in 2019 at the age of 30 with Reed Priddy, as I said, and took the last with Theo Brunner last year. Partnered with Phil Dahlhauser for the 2025 season. So, we go back and take a look at the Kings of the Pier. 2005 to 2018, a 13-year stretch with Phil Dahlhauser taking 7 first, 2 second in those 13-year period, and then winning more on either end of that in both Karch's time frame and now Trevor's. And then in 2019, the torch got passed to Trevor Crabb. Can Phil take it from Karch? Can Phil and Trevor win a Manhattan Beach Open championship this year? I don't think it's impossible. I think they're not at the top of the list for odds. I think you'd have to put Andy Benesh and Miles Partain ahead of them at this point. I think you'd have to seriously consider putting Miles Evans and Chase Buttinger ahead of them at this point. And I think you're probably relatively even odds with Taylor Crabb and Taylor Sander, the 2023 Manhattan Beach Open champions. And then after that, Troy and Theo are probably a step down, step below Phil and Trevor. Just incredible, though, that Phil, at the age of 45, we're still talking about him being probably a top 3 best odds to win the Manhattan Beach Open Championship in 2025. And then we get to the question, what does the future hold? Who's going to be the next king of the pier? Can Trevor Crabb win a couple more? Trevor's got 4 right now. Winning 1 with Phil this year wouldn't put him any closer to Phil, get him a little closer to the top with Karch. But if we go back and take a look at that overall number of wins list, Trevor right now tied with 4 guys with 4 wins all time, St. John, Randy, and Kent. If he can get one more, that moves him into a 7-way tie for 3rd place with Mike Bright, Mike O'Hara, Ron Van Hagen, Jim Menges, Mike Dodd, Tim Hovland. So 1 would put Trevor Crabb in very, very elite company, and 2 would put him in the top 3 all-time for Manhattan Beach Open wins. So every one of these is hugely important to Trevor, a guy who's super focused on the domestic tour anyways, a guy who's super, super focused on the Manhattan Beach Open, as you can see there in that clip I just played for you on Sandcast. Triborn asked the question with a smile on his face, already knowing the answer, already knowing that Trevor was focused on the Manhattan Beach Open, already knowing that Trevor was focused on getting Phil his 8th MBO championship, putting him at the top of the list with Karch, and Trevor focused on getting his 5th, putting himself in a tie for 3rd most MBO championships of all time. Active players. Current active players with Manhattan Beach Open championships. Sadly, the list is not long. And when you take a look at this list over time, it is interesting to see the generation to generation to generation kind of handoff here. But not a lot of players on this current list with success at the top of the Manhattan Beach Open. And that's the fault, the blame of guys like Phil and Trevor who are taking all the wins. Triborn, as I said, 2 Manhattan Beach Open wins currently. He'll be going for his 3rd in 2025 with his new partner, Evan Corey. So Triborn's got 2, both with Trevor. Theo Brunner, age 39 is Theo Brunner with new partner Troy Field. Can he get a 2nd? But his undoubtedly on the back half of his career is Theo Brunner. Not any danger of bumping up into this list you see on your screen right here, tying any of those guys with 4 wins all time. Taylor and Taylor, Sander, age 32, Taylor Crabb, age 33. Probably 10 more years left at making runs at the Manhattan Beach Open. Can they get on this list a few more times to get into that rarefied air that is 4 Manhattan Beach Open wins or more? I think it'd be very hard to get 4 and 10 for the Taylors, but never say never. You know, when you take a look at this list here and you see how players go through different phases of their career, Phil with Todd won 3 in a row, 06 to 08. Didn't win again until 2014, 6 years later. Wins 1 with Rosie, and then wins 3 in the next 4 with partner Nick Lucena. Jake Gibb, by the way, another player there in the 2000s. 2 Manhattan Beach Open wins, 1 with Rosie, 1 with Casey Patterson, but a guy that you'd expect to have a lot more. And you'd expect him and Taylor to maybe have gotten their names on the pier. Closest they got in 2018, losing to Phil and Nick. And then, like I said, Taylor with his partner, Taylor Sander, his current partner, finally getting over the hump in 2023. So Theo, Taylor, and Tri, the only other active players besides Phil and Trevor with Manhattan Beach Open wins all time. So what does that mean? It means the next person on this list, the next guy who was the king of the pier when we do the off-season show season 10, maybe off-season show season 15 in 2040. The name after Trevor Crabb. We're going to go Karch, Phil, Trevor. The name after Trevor Crabb has not yet won a Manhattan Beach Open. And if you wanted to do odds for that, your highest odds on that list right now, Miles Partain, based on his age, his profile, his skill, his ability. Does not have a Manhattan Beach Open win yet, but made his first appearance in the Manhattan Beach Open finals in 2024, losing to Theo and Trevor. Andy Benish and Miles Partain, if they stay together, they will get their names on the pier sooner rather than later. Andy Benish a few years older than Miles, so his number would be a little bit below that. He's still got to get his first, does Andy Benish, just like Miles Partain. So they're at the very top of the list are Andy Benish and Miles Partain. And the next guy on that list, we might not even know his name yet. And that's the funny thing about beach volleyball. The next legend, the next king of the pier for the Manhattan Beach Open, if it's not Andy Benish or Miles Partain, we might not even know his name yet. So the future for the Manhattan Beach Open, a question mark. The past, right there on your screen. One more thing I wanted to get to, because I did a little digging here and just wanted to get you a little more information on some of the legends of the MBO. We talked about them a little bit. 1960, 1964, Brighton, O'Hara. They won 5 straight MBOs. They won a second place finish in 1966. Ron Van Hagen, a 9-year stretch as king of the pier, in our opinion. 8 straight finals appearances, 5 firsts, 6 seconds, and 1/3. Jim Menges took the title, 75 to 81. 5 first, 2 second, 1 fourth. 7 of 8 finals appearances with 5 different partners for the legend, Ron Van Hagen. The 80s, that was the story. Hov and Dodd. Karch went to play indoor. Somebody had to take the title. St. John and Randy, sadly, losing to Hov and Dodd 4 straight Manhattan Beach Open championship losses from 82 to 85 against Hov and Dodd. Hov and Dodd winning 5 and 6 years. Also took a second in 1989 and then a third in 1990. And then Phil and Karch, as we talked about, 30 years of dominance from 1988 to 2018. And a lot of talk about this on Instagram, I think, in the comments over the course of the last couple of days. I did a post of the most Manhattan Beach wins of all time, and a lot of conversation about who's the GOAT, who's the Jordan. I think at this point, given the context that there were 24 years between Karch's first and his last championship, and after that first one, he took 7 years off to go win 2 gold medals indoor. I think it's hard to say that anybody but Karch Kiraly is at the top of your list. He's the GOAT. He's the Jordan. Although, you're going to have your own opinions on that, and I'd love to hear them. Let me know in the comments. Give me a call. Drop it in the chat. Shoot me a DM. What do you think? Who's your GOAT? Who's your GOAT in beach volleyball? Is it Karch? Is it Phil? Is it somebody else? Maybe a non-American, possibly. Who's your GOAT American? I think it's Karch Kiraly for me. Phil Dahlhauser, a very, 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 very deserving second place on that list. But I don't think one more Manhattan Beach Open championship would put Phil at or above Karch's level, but it certainly solidifies his spot as probably the second best United States male volleyball player of all time. And then Trevor Crabb, over the last 5 years, 6 years, since going back to 2019, doing his part to solidify his name in the history of the Manhattan Beach Open championship as one of the top players of all time there as well. So I thought that was really interesting. I hope you did too. I was very interested to look back at the history of the Manhattan Beach Open tournament. The granddaddy of them all, been going on since 1960. It's the most important beach volleyball tournament in the world, many will tell you. I think on the international tour, World Championships, which moves around, so it doesn't really count, but it's probably the biggest regular tournament. But we're going to, excluding the Olympics, Stade in Switzerland is probably the biggest one on the international stage. And I'm sure there are Brazilian stops on the Brazilian national tour that they would argue are big or as big or bigger than the Manhattan Beach Open. But as far as history goes, as far as legacy goes, the Manhattan Beach Open will and will always will be the granddaddy of them all, the biggest tournament for the sport of beach volleyball, the Wimbledon. And Karch Kiraly having the legacy of winning it 8 times to Phil 7. Can Phil and Trevor get an 8th for Phil? Can Phil get a 5th for Trevor in 2025? It's certainly their goal, as you heard in that clip. Something to keep an eye on as we get through the 2025 season. 2 legends of the game. A lot of names on the pier between the 2 guys. Can they do it once more together as that new partnership? Thought you might enjoy that. I certainly did this week as well, going through all the history of the Manhattan Beach Open tournament. We're going to do the same thing on the women's side next week. I got all those names right here on the back of my sheet. Who's the GOAT women's beach volleyball player as far as it relates to the Manhattan Beach Open? Who has the most names on the pier? And who currently could challenge, could put their names on that list, take the king or queen in that case, queen of the pier, from some of the legends that have retired at this point. That'll do it for us here on the off-season show tonight. Just a reminder, a programming note for all of you. Next week on the program, that would be March 5th, Wednesday, March 5th, we're going to do the Women's Manhattan Beach Open history. On March 12th, it's the off-season show finale. I'm going to be putting together a game where I'm going to be asking you to pick winners for the 2025 season. So we're going to assign points. 10 points for a Manhattan Beach Open, a correct MBO championship winner. Maybe 5 points for a AVP League champion or AVP League finalist. Maybe 10 points for AVP League winner if you pick it correct. A World Champs qualification, maybe 2 points. A World Champs medal, 5 points. A World Champs winner pick, maybe 15 points, something like that. But we're going to put it out there a few days before the season starts. I'm going to ask you to, if you're interested, It'll be a contest. I'll be giving away a Bet the Beach T-shirt. Send me your picks, and we're gonna assign points to all of them. We'll get that up. Be a game that we can play throughout the course of the 2025 season. The 2024-2025 off-season show coming to an end. The season finale just 2 weeks from tonight, March 12th. The off-season show, mouthful. The off-season finale, off-season 1 finale. I don't know what you call that. 2 weeks from tonight on March 12th. With that, I will leave you. Come back next week for Manhattan Beach Open Women's History. And until then, have a great night and a pleasant tomorrow.
Wake up, sunshine, let's go play. Beach volleyball is the way. Sand in my toes, sky so blue. Fun in the sun, just me and you. Bounce on the beach, set the ball high. Smiles all around and we reach for the sky. Surfs up and laughter's in the breeze. Join the podcast if you please. Diving in, watch us fly. Under the sun we feel so high. Spike and surf, hear the cheer. Every day is summer here. Sunshine, let's go play. Beach volleyball is the way. Sand in my toes, sky so blue. Fun in the sun, just me and you. Bounce on the beach, set the ball high. Smiles all around and we reach for the sky. Surfs up and laughter's in the breeze. Join the podcast if you please. Dive and dig, watch us fly. Under the sun we feel so high. Spike and surf, hear the cheer. Every day is summer here. Dig, watch us fly. Under the sun we feel so high. Spike and surf, hear the cheer. Every day is summer here.